Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pathways to Happiness podcast. My name is Nena Lavonne, and today we are going to be asking the question, why is life so unfair? This question has come up multiple times this week, and I totally understand why. More people than ever are facing problems that they never expected to face, and there's just a lot of anxiety out there. There are a lot of people feeling hopeless and exhausted and wondering why any of this is happening. So I think it's a great topic and an important topic, and I've got a lot of thoughts about it. And hopefully, after listening today, you will not only feel validated, but also inspired and encouraged. Usually, I sit down with an outline when I'm recording a podcast and I have a specific direction and specific points that I want to get to. But today, I really want to speak from my heart because this is a feeling and a conclusion that has caused me a lot of suffering in the past. And I just wanted to address it as sincerely and openly as possible. So, as always, before we get into the topic, I of course want to thank you for helping this podcast grow so quickly and for your tremendous support both here and on the Nena Lavonne YouTube channel. I always get this sense that we are in this together, and I love the insight that you all share in the comments and the emails and messages you send. So thank you so much for being a part of this community. If you aren't already a subscriber, please do take a moment and become one. We are all taking this journey together into wellness and healing, and we definitely want you to be a part of it. I wanted to quickly share the most precious story about something that I witnessed the other day that has not left my mind since it happened. So I was at a soccer game and I got there really, really early, like probably 30 minutes early. So I sat down and began watching another game that was already in session. And these were babies playing. They couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. So it was just adorable to see them kicking around the ball, and their little jerseys were just so big on them. It was just the cutest thing in the world, but they knew what they were doing. They were competitive. So they were all playing and they were really, really into it. And then this little boy caught my eye because for whatever reason, he just turned away from all the action and started looking over his shoulder. I had no idea what he was looking for, but he looked down at the grass and saw that there was this little flower growing. So everyone around him is just screaming, and the crowd is really, really loud. And he starts backing away and he goes over to the flower and picks it out of the ground and puts it up to his nose and starts smelling it. And I'm watching all of this, and it's almost like it's happening in slow motion. And I start hearing his coach and his parents screaming at him, "Johnny, kick the ball! Johnny, what are you doing? Go to the ball!" And he's just completely lost in his own world. And then finally he snaps out of it and starts running with the other kids. But I just keep thinking about that moment that he just took all for himself. Now, granted, it was the wrong moment probably to be captivated by the beauty of a flower growing in a soccer field, but I felt that moment was a reminder to us to find those little moments in our life, to notice the magic all around us, and that sometimes we need to just walk away from the chaos for a moment. So this week, if you need to step away for a second to smell the roses, to have a cup of tea, whatever it is, here is your reminder that it is okay to take that moment for yourself. Preferably not when your soccer team is counting on you to make a goal, but do remember to take care of yourself. Anyway, I had to share this story because I thought it was so adorable, and I am anxious to get into today's topic. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the questions I got this week were, do you think life is fair? And why is life so unfair? I'm actually going to answer both questions today, even though these philosophical types of questions can't technically be answered, at least not definitively. but I do have a lot to say about them. So I'm going to start with that first question. Is life fair? I really used to think so. I mean, I felt that it must be, even if situations aren't fair externally, that it must even out somehow, like the internal struggles must make it fair. I thought that there must be variables that we don't know about that are somehow making it fair, because I felt that it wouldn't be fair for life to be unfair. I always had this sense of justice, that life had to be fair. So I just accepted that to be true, even though there really wasn't a lot of evidence to support that. In fact, there is a lot of evidence to support the contrary. I remember actually having this conversation as a child with a friend, and I was saying that I had this belief that life was fair, and I was trying to explain why. And they were saying that, how could that be true if some people, are born in this country and have, trivial problems in a lot of cases, and other people are born in countries where they don't have any water? Or what about people that live here that lose their house to a tornado, or that their baby was born with a disease? How can these things be fair? How can they be fair when there are other people that are celebrities or supermodels, or they're billionaires that live in Hawaii? And we had this conversation, but I still kept going to that conclusion that, again, there must be things that we don't know that is somehow making this fair. And I really dismissed it all until many years later, until I was an adult. And for some reason, I had this realization finally that a lot of the people that I knew personally seemed like they were going through a lot of suffering. And these are really good people that live good, honest lives. And a lot of bad things seem to be happening in their life. And it's like it clicked all of a sudden that these situations really aren't fair. Life isn't fair. These people don't deserve this. They're good people, they follow the rules. Why is this happening? It was like all of a sudden I couldn't deny that life was unfair. I think I always felt like life was some kind of test when I was younger. So if it was a test, I thought that logically that the test itself had to be fair. It just didn't match my paradigm to think that bad things could just happen to good people. But I was seeing this all around me. Bad things were happening to good people. And that's been true throughout history. It was such a powerful and upsetting conclusion to make, but I did eventually come to that conclusion. And then later, when I started going through my own struggles, when the path of my own life started to go into uncharted territory, it just really reinforced this realization. And so, if any of you out there are in that place right now where you are wondering why life is unfair, and you're just stuck in that mental state where you are angry or sad or feel helpless because life seems relentless or cruel, I want you to know that it is understandable that you feel that way. I want to validate these feelings for you because even though there is hope and there are ways out of feeling like this, right now, these feelings are very real and they may feel like they are all consuming. So before we move on, I want you to do me a favor. And before the end of the day, if you have not done so already, I want you to express yourself. Call a friend, write in a journal, scream in your bedroom, go on a walk and talk to the trees, whatever feels right to you. But please, get it out. Acknowledge your feelings and do not censor yourself. Let yourself say the things that you are feeling, even if deep down you feel guilty about saying it or feel that you shouldn't be feeling this way in the first place. Accept that you are feeling this way and express it, because until we do this, we cannot move forward. The more we try to stuff it down, the more Negative feelings are going to be created for ourselves. Life is going to start to feel even worse. It's going to start to feel even more unfair because we are going to feel that not only is life terrible right now, but that we have to keep quiet about it, that our feelings don't matter or aren't justified. Your feelings matter and they are valid because you are feeling them. So express that. When I go running in the morning, I really do talk to the trees sometimes. I mean, I talk in my own head too, but sometimes you really need to hear your own voice say things out loud. So please do that today in whatever way you can. Bottling up these feelings is definitely not going to help us find solutions. And we have to think about why we are feeling this way. And yes, it could be something very obvious. I mean, look what is happening in the world right now. There are so many direct causes for these situations. So in these cases, yes, it's black and white, but that's not always the case. But even when it is, we have to walk ourselves through it. I have a friend that is going through an extremely difficult time right now and is definitely feeling that life is not fair. She and her family own a restaurant, and it's a family restaurant that before they owned, their parents owned. So it's been in the family for a while. And, it is not the most successful restaurant in the world, but it has definitely provided them with a good life. And it's something that is just a part of their life and it is a part of their family tradition. So when all this lockdown stuff started happening, they were really scared about the fate of their restaurant, of course. And they were initially told that they were going to have to shut down for like 2 weeks. And then, of course, it got extended. But during that initial 2 weeks, they started to freak out and they said, you know what? Let's turn this into a positive, and there's a lot of things around the restaurant that need to be refurbished, and we can, just kind of take this time to kind of make it even better. So they really used this time to clean everything and to replace anything that was broken, and they did a lot of upgrades. So they got the restaurant ready for it to be reopened. Now, of course, when they were told that they could reopen, it was months later than was expected, and then they were told they could only open to 50% capacity, which has been a huge struggle for them, especially because right before this, they put all this money into the restaurant because they thought it was going to be a temporary solution. So they had all these extra expenses, and then they had to bring everything up to the new codes also, which, again, more money was put into this restaurant. And sadly, they have come to the realization now that they can't get out of this, that they are going to have to close the restaurant, and they are devastated because they have felt for so long that this is their legacy. So they are definitely feeling that life isn't fair right now because they have put in all this work for years and years and years, and now they are really going to have to rethink their entire life, and they're stuck with this shell of a restaurant that they're not sure what to do about either. So it's just a lot. So when things like that are happening, yeah, that's a really easy thing to see why we are feeling hopeless in this moment and why we are feeling that life isn't fair. So it's simple to see the source of the suffering, but maybe for you, it's not just one thing. Maybe it's everything. Maybe all these little things keep adding up, and finally it's just feeling like too much. I mean, just everything happening in the world is a lot to process. Even if we aren't talking about sicknesses and job losses, even if we're talking about simple things that seem to be lost or indefinitely on hold, just the amount of inconvenience and all the extra steps that everything is taking right now can really take a toll on our mental health. And I know a lot of times we don't want to be a complainer and we don't want to sound superficial by even bringing up these things, but let's face it, We are human beings, and a lot of times these things adding up can cause a lot of stress and a lot of feelings of hopelessness. So these things end up kind of pushing us over that tipping point. And just the fact that many of us can't do the things that we enjoy right now, or things that we feel are necessary, like going to the gym, all these things again start to accumulate, and we can come to that same conclusion. Life isn't fair. I didn't ask for any of this. Why am I going through this? But we need to sit ourselves down and kind of list it out. Figure out, first of all, what is making us feel this way? Is it just one situation? Is it one specific problem? Or is it just kind of an overwhelming avalanche of all these things happening at once? No matter what it is, we have to start by getting clear about this. And sometimes just by kind of organizing these thoughts, we can actually start to feel better. And then we can look at this list and acknowledge in a lot of cases that things aren't going as planned. And that sounds like such a simple thing to say, but I think this is key for a lot of people. For most of us, I think, we all have this blueprint of how we think life should go or will go, or at least how we think it would be best if it did go. And we really cling to that. And it can be painful to look at this blueprint and realize that life isn't going this way, or life can no longer go this way. Because as human beings, we just want certainty. We want control. We want control of our path. We want control over our destiny. And we think that when things shift and when we're redirected, that we have no control and that there is no certainty. And the second part of that sentence is actually true. There isn't certainty. But in reality, we have to understand that there is never certainty. Certainty is always an illusion. When we have a track record where things consistently seem to happen in one way, we mistakenly start believing that certainty is obtainable. And it never is. Things might not change, but things always can change. And that is a challenging part of life that we have to come to terms with, because as painful as it is to think about that at first, there's actually a great peace that comes with accepting that. It frees us from living a life where we are working endlessly to protect our current reality at all costs. Because even though we should put effort into living and designing the life we want, knowing that life sometimes happens on its own can save us from simply existing or from being afraid of life. When we can allow for possibilities and accept the flow of life sometimes pulls us in another direction, there's a lot less suffering that can be experienced, because life is no longer a fight that we can't win. Life is just life. And we are here to embrace it and to experience it, even when our blueprint gets thrown in the trash can. We have to start walking away from the idea that we can only be happy if life goes one specific way. And that's not meant to belittle any of the things that we are going through right now. It doesn't mean that they aren't devastating, but it also doesn't have to mean that our life is over, that we can't be happy going in a new direction, that we aren't going to be able to get past this and learn from this and build something new if it comes down to needing to do that, because we can. We have to learn that we don't have to be a prisoner to our external experiences. They can be awful, but they don't have to define us. And in the end, perception and the way we choose to think about things are actually what makes the bigger impact in our life over the experience itself, for good or for bad. They did that famous study where they looked at people who had huge changes in their life. So they looked at people who had had accidents and became paraplegic, and they also looked at people who had just won the lottery for a considerable amount of money. So as you can imagine, in both situations, people's life and their emotions were, really, really changed because they had, dramatic things happen to them. But what they found in the study was within 1 year, only 1 year, both went back to their original happiness set point. So the paraplegic, after 1 year, felt no worse about their life than they did prior to the accident, and the lottery winner, after 1 year, felt no better about their life than before they received this money. So we can look at these two very different situations and see that the outcome is the same. After everything that happened, they really ended up back where they started. But we also know from extensive research about happiness that a lot can be done to really improve our mental outcome, to increase our happiness, to help us push through difficult situations. And that all comes down to us doing the inner work, to us looking at situations and not letting it pull us down the rabbit hole of despair. It comes from us looking in the mirror and saying, I will get through this. I am strong, I am a capable person, and I refuse to throw the towel in. There is something that is at the other side of this. Life is about choices, and one of the biggest choices that we can make is how we are going to decide to feel and how we are going to decide to push forward. We are kidding ourselves if we think we are the only ones that are going through something challenging right now. Life can be incredibly challenging, but we can get up, we can brush ourselves off, and we can say to ourselves, this is not the end of my story. This is not the final chapter. I refuse to let this be the end, because you know what? This isn't the end. This is just the moment. It is just this moment. And this moment is going to pass. It may take blood and sweat to get out of this moment, but life is valuable and it's worth it to give that blood and sweat right now. There is always something that we can create that is bigger and better and more authentic, more fulfilling, and more in alignment to who we really are. And the best piece of advice I ever got was, if you are walking through hell, keep walking. Just keep walking. If you keep walking, if you keep moving, eventually you will be out of the woods. I promise you. So please, just keep walking. I know it's so hard to look around and compare yourself to other people and wonder why this is happening to you or why other people have it so easy. We can feel like life should be a checklist or a formula where if you do all the things you're supposed to do, then in the end, good things will always happen. And it can feel so crushing when you feel that it's just not working out that way. But as crazy as it might seem, be open to the fact that being pushed down a new path can be the most necessary, the most healing, and the most important push you could ever get. We are humans. We are doing the best we can, but we don't have all the answers. We don't know all there is to know. And sometimes life knows better, and life knows that all the roots need to be pulled up before we can plant a new garden. And believe me, we can always plant a new garden. And as we are going through all of this, as we are starting to heal, if we can learn to look at the experience and say, what am I supposed to be learning from this? What can I gain from this? You will be surprised at the insight you can be given. And then we can start solution finding. Maybe we need to come up with a whole new big long-term plan for our lives, or maybe we just need to figure out how we can begin to heal what we just went through. And If we start looking for actionable steps, we signal our body that we want to move forward, and we start to see for ourselves that we have control, not necessarily about what does or does not happen to us, but how we are going to let us be affected by it, how we are going to process it, and what we will do with all we've learned by going through this. Helplessness is learned, but optimism can also be learned, and it can push us a lot further, a lot faster if we can get to the point of optimism. So, no, life is not fair, but it can always be good. It might not be good in the way that we anticipated, and maybe we will get some cuts and bruises along the way, but look for the good. It's there. As long as we are living and breathing, our story is not over. Be open to possibilities. Be open to redirection. Don't waste your precious energy trying to constantly recreate the same experience. You don't have to constantly fight life. New experiences are waiting for us our whole lifetime, and we have to be open to them. And when life seems too crazy, too much, take a moment for yourself. In the middle of the chaos, take a moment to look over at the grass, to pick up a flower, and to smell it. There is beauty even in the worst storm of your life. Thank you guys so much for listening today. I hope this was helpful and healing. And please know that you matter and that you will get through this. Life does not have to be fair to be beautiful. See you next time, guys.